Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name's Alisha Braché here at Cosmic Gateway. I'm super excited to get back and hosting conversations here on this platform. So, as many of you might already know, during my October update, I was called to put out a call to invite people to come on and share unique stories that may not be expressed through um, the usual sort of awakening narrative. And I feel like we're on the precipice of great change where people experiences are starting to shift and change, and we're sort of acclimating into newer versions of ourselves, having new and different experiences. And I thought it would be a great opportunity to start to host conversations of people who are willing to share to come on. So I'm super excited to and now introduce my next guest here. I have Xamanxi with me, who who responded to the call, and we had a little chat. And I thought it would be great to bring on your story and get you to share here. Now, with these types of stories, I normally share them, or I have in the past, put them on my New Earth Children YouTube channel. So if this information is new for you and you find it interesting, I will put the New Earth link, a New Earth Children link underneath, and you can explore some other material around this topic. And of course, we're going to be speaking about other topics as well. So welcome, Xamanxi. Thank you so much for being here.
Aloha, thank you for having me. I
So
saw the update and I knew I needed, my guides told me I needed to reach out. So
yeah, and so when I received your email, I get this instant yes. So it was like, okay, there's obviously this information needs to be shared, and I have felt that for some time. And yeah, it's perfect timing. So maybe you could give us a little bit of your background or share a little bit about who you are and yeah, what's brought you to the beginning before we go into the journey itself.
yeah, I think I'll start with like my transition story. I was a fully functional alcoholic and didn't know where it was coming from. And fast forward to years later, years of healing and cycling out of it, I realized that it was coming through my lineage. And it was a lot of ancestry clearing that I was going through. And I was guided to, these energetic healers that I had no idea what they were about, what they did, but I trusted. And so the more I trusted and the more I leaned in, the more they were available for me in different forms. And so, I started with yoga and meditation, and I went on to Reiki. I became a Reiki master. From that space, it opened me up multidimensionally. It really, when I was doing my Reiki sessions, there was energy that was coming through that was not Reiki. It was very shamanic. And so when I tapped into that, it was like, oh, okay, I was a shaman in many past lives. So then that energy got to come through. And, I do so much work on myself and making sure that I'm grounding and I'm filling and I'm processing through things and really working through my shadow and embracing my shadow and balancing my ego with my highest self. And I feel like because of that, I'm just a really open and clear channel. And so I can channel past on loved ones. I connect with animals and spirit guides. Galactic families is now like the new one for me, which brought me obviously to Cosmic Gateway. Uh, and so yeah, I'm pretty open, and I started having just these experiences of just things shifting in my life and things happening with my awakening that were inexplicable. And sometimes, um, I guess like what comes to me is like out of this world. It's like sometimes so unbelievable that if I shared my story with people, they might think I was crazy, or they might think that, I was losing it, or I was watching too many videos and they were infecting me, and, all of the things that people say. But I know in my soul how very connected I am to God and to, the creator and all of the higher vibration, higher dimensional beings. And so I've trusted and continued to surrender and trust. And that's really what brought me here on this current journey that I'm on.
Mm. Well, maybe, yeah. So thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And I love that because I think Um, Reiki is often the gateway drug, if I can put it that way.
It
Um,
opens you up for sure. They always say like it's just going to open you to your intuition. There's just
yeah,
something about it that really links you up with the higher dimensions. So
yeah, definitely. And I think it's a great opening. And then, like yourself, I studied Reiki many years ago, and I never felt drawn to it. I know that a lot of people were studying at the time, and I was just like, nah. But I was at a phase where I was looking to reconnect deeper with my spiritual path and purpose. And through that, just that was what unfolded for me, because at the time working, I was doing more of regression type and psychic readings. And then when I kind of stumbled into Reiki, this whole world of energy and multidimensionality started to open up. So yeah, it's cool that you had similar experience. So maybe we'll fast forward perhaps, or unless you want to talk more about like healing from like alcoholism and like the ancestral, is there any more that you can share around that for people who may be going through some form of ancestral healing or substance abuse? Um,
yeah. For me it was I was working so hard on raising my vibration. I was doing yoga, I was working out, I was meditating, I was doing all this, like I was eating really good foods and changing the way that I did things. I was eliminating the toxins in my home, and I was still drinking. And it was like I was doing all of this stuff to raise my vibration, and in the end, one drink would completely drop me back down. And so my biggest awakening with that was that I needed to, if I really wanted to raise my vibration, I had to stop doing things that were going to lower my vibration. And alcohol was one of them. And I feel like there had to be a cycling out of it. I feel like what a lot of people don't really, maybe are not aware of with alcohol and recreational drug use, is that there are a lot of earthbound spirits that connect in those spaces. And there's spirits that don't want to rise. There's spirits that want to stay and be involved in the drugs, the alcohol, the violence, the sex, whatever it is, they feed off of that energy. And so when I was cycling out of my alcoholism, and I say cycling because it took me, how many years, I don't even know how many years to become an alcoholic, right? And to cycle out of it, it really wasn't an overnight thing. It was cycles of falling off and, going backwards, and then having grace with myself, and knowing now from a higher perspective that every time I was not only taking away the alcohol, I was also getting myself away from these earthbound spirits. So it became less and less and less that I was connected to over time. And finally, to the point where I was able to really break free and let go.
hmm, yeah.
Yeah.
And perfectly said. And I think it's a great thing to highlight because um yeah, there are a lot of entities and spirits that keep people in the cycle of addiction, whatever that, however, whatever form that may take,
Yeah.
and that can even just be food or, mental self-talk, things like that. It can come in so many different forms, but as you're working with releasing those beings, those entities, that can make it a lot, doing the energy work can help bring um results in the physical change of being able to break free of that. Did you feel like some of those, I'm going to throw some oddballs at you, sorry. Do you
That's
feel
okay.
like some of those entities or those attachments that come through that were through the ancestral line? Do you think that that
Oh yeah.
sort of, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. There was a lot of drug abuse and alcoholism in both sides of my ancestry. And so yeah, there was, and when it was not drug abuse and alcoholism, it was antidepressants. So there was always some kind of substance. And I feel like the passed on loved ones that were in that vibration, it was really easy for them to attach and stay with me.
Mm,
And so yeah, I even years later I did a reading for a cousin who was kind of going through her own thing. And, she was going through drug abuse. And when we connected, it was, her father had passed away and was in a lower vibration. And when she was using the drug, she was able to connect with him in that space. And so him being an earthbound spirit, it was her way of connecting. And that was really profound to get to that level and say, oh, okay, like, you're doing it because you feel like some kind of nurturing there with a passed on loved one. And so, yeah, it was just a lot of clearing and a lot of allowing my ancestors to come to the comprehension themselves that there were better places that they could be. That I feel like a lot of people transition in those lower vibrations, and when they do, they're like, oh, well, I can stay here and be attached to this and just continue doing this. And when you start to raise their vibration by raising your own, then they start to see like, oh, there's so much more out there, there's so much more that we can do with our souls. So yeah, that was a big, big step for me.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. Can we move to maybe what happened to you in 2019? I think you said in the end of 2019.
Yeah. So the end of 2019, I had just finished my yoga teacher training, and I was really like deep in my self-healing journey. And there was this very specific date. It was a portal day, and I knew on that day that something different was going to happen. I didn't know what. I just knew that my life was going to change completely on that day. And so I actually drank the entire day. I got drunk, drank the entire day. And then right before like midnight, when it was supposed to happen, I stopped drinking and I went to the beach and I just said, okay, I'm ready. And from there, the next day I woke up and I went through like a complete identity crisis. I didn't know who I was, I mean, there was just so much about me that I wasn't able to fully comprehend in the moment. And so fast forward a couple years of going deeper into my healing, and I found out that I'm actually a walk-in soul. And so the soul that was in this body before me was uh she was exhausted, and she had been through so much, and she knew that she was trying to heal something but didn't know how, and wasn't able to get away from the alcohol completely. And what I realized, and I went deep through this, was she put the call out in 2016, I believe 2016, 2017. And at that time, we connected. I believe, okay, Andromeda is where I'm hearing. We connected in Andromeda, and I heard the call and I said, yes, I'll come in, take over the body. But I had to come in and help her clean the body. So I was in the body while I was growing through the transition out of the alcoholism. And so once the body was to a level where I could actually take over the body and not have that addiction anymore, was when I walked in completely. And then about a month later, my divine union, my partner, walked in as well. And the bodies that we were in were actually supposed to meet up. They were a divine union also. So they were supposed to meet up. We came into their bodies and we met up at the end of 2020 and married the beginning of 2021. So everything happened just really fast. And
Mm-hmm.
it took us a few years to really figure out what was going on with our bodies and who we were. And there are things that we don't remember because our souls didn't experience everything that these bodies did, but we have imprints, right? We have these imprints of what happened and what we needed to still work through for them.
Mm-hmm.
And when they transitioned, they were in lower vibrations. So we also had to help raise their vibrations to get them to a higher vibration where they could actually reincarnate again.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big part of the journey that happened starting the end of 2019.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about was there anything specific that happened that night? And I guess the reason I want to go into this a little bit is because I believe that there are different forms of walk-in. I
Yeah.
teach about this. And it's always around the end of the year that this
Oh,
starts to
wow.
happen in Matt. I watch the trends, and it's always around November, December, where there is a lot more walk-in. So it's kind of timely.
Yeah.
Um,
Interesting.
some people go through what I call a soul walk-in upgrade, which is the same soul but more coming in
Mhm.
embodied. And then obviously yours was a complete switch from one what
Yeah.
exit, enter.
Exactly. So ours was a complete switch. Our my husband and I were the same soul. And so our soul had already completed ascension. We were already done. We were in a much higher vibration. We were actually in Sirius. And so that was where we called home. And when we came in, we spent a couple years transitioning into the body and learning it and learning some of the imprints. And then when we came in, it was like the night that it happened for me, I didn't know what I just knew that as of the next day, it was like, as of tomorrow, my life's over. So I'm just gonna get, I'm gonna drink all day long. And so this is the body and the other soul that was like, this is my last shot. I'm just gonna do what I can before I go.
I'm gonna party my way out of here.
Yeah, it was wild that she drank all day. And then, went to the beach and just sat there. It was full moon, it was a portal. Sat there under the full moon portal and watched the waves and just said, okay, I'm ready. Went home and went to sleep. And then the next AM is when I rose up and now my soul's in the body and my soul is like, okay, what is this? It was familiar to me because I had been transitioning through it, but there was a very big identity crisis where I remember speaking with a friend at that time and just saying, hey, I don't really know who I am. I know I have this body, but like I just finished this yoga teacher training and I feel like I'm gonna start teaching more and I just don't know who I am and I don't know how to relate that to people because when I was working on this part of the healing before the transition, before I walked in, um, the body really went solo. Didn't have any friends, didn't like moved somewhere where they didn't know anybody. Worked from home, so very like hermit type energy. And so now coming out was like, okay, the body knew how to go out and be in a crowd and be drunk or be like, with alcohol assistance. And now it was like, oh yeah, alcohol, that I don't even want to touch that. There was no desire for it whatsoever. Like just it just wasn't even in my vibration. But it was, well, what do I do? How do I meet people? How do I get out? And I remember like getting rid of the television because that for me it didn't vibe in my vibration. I was like, I don't know, this just isn't for me. And so I tried putting it in the closet, that didn't work. And I finally was like, I just need to get rid of it. And I sold it or gave it away. And then, the pandemic happened and so it was like, oh no, you got to stay inside.
Yeah,
And now you're going to be inside with no television. So figure out what to do.
right.
And, from that space, it actually accelerated my mediumship because that's when I got into like understanding tarot and reading oracle cards and that kind of stuff. So,
Did you notice, like, were there notable personality shifts and changes, different likes and dislikes, food preferences, like, were there noticeable things like that that you?
oh yeah, big shifts. Yeah. When I walked in, I really was plant-based. I didn't care for anything meat. I was very connected with animals. So it like hurt my heart to even think about eating animals. And I was in this space where I was just like, the soul that was before me was very unconscious when it came to that kind of stuff. Hardly ate because wanted to be on like in the energy of the alcohol. And when she did, it was fast food or like lower vibrational stuff. And when I came in, it was getting rid of everything toxic in my home. I started making my own toothpaste and my own deodorant, and I researched, the best shampoo bars, and it was like everything was a complete 180 from where I was before. My entire life changed.
Yeah, wow. And I know you talked about having energetic imprints of memory from like, but was it hard to connect with memories from the past or family
Yeah.
members, friends, things like that?
Oh yeah, extremely hard to connect with memories from the past. I mean, it was something that I had to ask for. Like I had to literally sit there and say, I have no idea what this is, and I need assistance on it. And I would get assistance from higher dimensions because I wasn't remembering anything. And I haven't shared this publicly, only my really close friends and my husband know, but I even told them, I have no attachments to my family whatsoever. Like, if tomorrow I didn't talk to any of them ever again, I would be okay with that. And it's not because there's any any bad energy. I love my family, but there was no attachment there for me. It wasn't I don't know, even talking to them, it doesn't feel the same. Like it's been better now after years, of like connecting with my dad. I was always really close with my dad and my brother. And connecting with them, I've been able to bring back some of the memories and the imprints. But, overall, I had little to no memory of what the body went through. The problem with that though is that the body had all the memory.
Yeah.
So the body was remembering things and getting triggered by things. And then my soul was going, well, what is this? I don't know what's going on. Where is this trigger coming from? And because I'm such an open channel, and I feel like that was a gift that I brought through with me when I walked in, was being so open.
Did
And
it amplify or accelerate your,
oh yeah,
yeah.
it completely accelerated everything. To the point where I was on a phone call with a friend in a different state, and I drew out the home that they were going to later that day. And I said, like, show me the house when you get there. I want to see what it looks like. So I was remote viewing, and I was doing all of this stuff that I had no idea how to do before. So yeah, it really heightened everything for me.
Mhm. Yeah, wow. Yeah, that tends to be what I notice when people go through a walk-in process, whichever walk-in version that is. And I haven't shared this yet, but earlier in the year when I went through my second rapid at Kundalini, there was a walk-in experience that I had, but it was like all of my aspects came in at once. So it was
Wow.
bananas off the chart.
I
But
bet.
anyway, yeah. Um, and so yeah, I do believe that does facilitate an advancement. So thank you for is there anything else noticeable? I just feel like perhaps people who may be watching this may be in progress of going through it. And I know that it does happen. Like, yes, there is a definite point in time where there is a switch, but as you so eloquently put, like there was a acclimation time that was over a transition phase over a couple of years that kind of then got to the switch over point. Um, anything, I mean, that must have been pretty hard to navigate on your own without having an awareness.
Yeah, it was. I think it became easier when I found out that, obviously that my husband walked in too, and then we started like looking at our journeys together. And for a lot of walk-ins, it typically happens in some kind of near-death experience. So for my husband, he was homicidal and suicidal, and at the point where there was no turning back. And I feel like it was a blessing that the soul that was in my body before reached out first. And I have the imprint. I remember when that happened. I mean, she was drunk and she was driving and she was just like, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. Like, get me out of here. I don't want to be here. I don't know what my purpose is. I'm so lost. And then from there, things started to shift. And so, yeah, that was my understanding of how everything came into fruition with that. And even when I found out, it was, I didn't know at the time. When I came in, I knew that my senses were heightened. I knew that I was very connected. I knew that I could do all these magical, wonderful things like remote view and talk to animals and insects and all of this great stuff. But it was years later after I was I became a QHHT practitioner, quantum healing hypnosis technique by Dolores Cannon. And I was reading Dolores Cannon books at the time. And one of the books that I read, I got to, I read all the way through and it felt so good. And I got to like the last chapter and I put it down and it was like I just couldn't look at it. And it took me probably like 8 or 9 months to finally pick that book back up. And when I picked it up, it was about walk-in souls. And immediately I started reading it and I had this feeling in my body and I was a little like in fear. I was like, oh my gosh, this is resonating like too much. And I don't know how to feel right now. This is why I put the book down before I wasn't ready for it. And so then I started to open up and I started to ask questions. And what's been interesting, I feel like for me is every time I would ask, is this the old soul or is this the new soul? Like, when we would do a past life regression, I would say, well, is this the old soul or is this the new soul? And spirit would say, yes. And I was like, okay. And so what finally came to me is that because we're all one and eventually we all come back to one. And so no matter if you think it's a soul upgrade or a full walk-in, or when it comes down to it, we're all coming back to unity and oneness. And so I am you and you are me. And that's how I live my life now. So if something bothers me or triggers me, I'm going like, okay, something in my soul needs healing.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't want to speak on behalf of your husband, but can you share a little bit about his experience? Was it similar? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he went through a lot growing up as well, and he had three major events that had happened in his life. He had an older brother that he was really close with that transitioned really early. He was, I believe, 40 when he transitioned, and it was very unexpected. And he had just got out of a really long relationship, and then he had an altercation with his mother, and and a few other people at that time. And it just felt like, he says he needed like a cold, hard punch to the face to wake him up because he had gotten to the space where he just felt so unloved.
Mm.
And he didn't know how to create that himself. And so he he became, homicidal and suicidal. And he had the clear idea in his mind that he was going to like go kill this person, and then afterwards he was going to take his own life in front of his mother so that she could feel it. And it was just this big cycle. And in that moment it was like, that's I feel like when the call went out, like this body, because his body's amazing. He's always been like really into eating well and taking care of his body. And so I feel like his body was like, oh, we can walk in and it's a good body. Like we can actually use it to help raise consciousness. And so, yeah, his shift was immediate after that. And then his transition also was, he went from being in this really low vibration of just having all of these crazy thoughts to I believe he was running every day. He started meditating. He started doing all of these things to raise his vibration. And I feel like that's when our souls came into the bodies and were helping clear the bodies.
Hmm.
And then, with his the soul that was in his body before, with the transition out with that soul, it was in a much lower vibration than the soul that was in my body. And so we had times where that soul kept trying to come back into the body,
Yeah.
and it was something unexpected. And when he would get a chance to come back into the body, it was like living with a nightmare. It was a completely different person, and I didn't know where the other part of my soul was. And every time we had to do like massive energetic clearings and bring him back. And yeah, there were some really scary moments where that soul just didn't want to raise their vibration, and they kept trying to come back into the body after he had finally fully walked in.
Wow. Okay. I've never heard of that. So that's really fascinating. So that to me sounds like it wasn't a full-fledged agreement, perhaps, or yeah.
Yeah, I tapped into it, and I had asked at the time, like, what's going on? I thought this was the agreement that we would, walk into these bodies, and everything would be switched. But what happened is they didn't realize, the souls that switched out, they didn't realize that they were still going to be in that low vibration that they were in. We couldn't in the contract say, okay, we're going to come in and now you're going to come to Sirius and you're going to be in this super high vibration. Their souls still had to grow through where they were at. And so when they transitioned and they were earthbound, they
Mm,
didn't expect that.
right.
And that's when they started coming back in. And it was this whole transition that we had to grow through for a few years.
Mm, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that fully complete now on
Oh
for him?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's complete. And so the beginning of the journey that I'm on now started in late 2022. And we were doing Kundalini activations. We went to these Kali sessions with some friends of ours that are amazing. And the souls started coming through and talking to me.
Mhm.
And, her soul said, he doesn't want to rise. I don't know what to do. Can you help him rise? And so my husband and I sat down and we said, okay, like, what do we need to do to get them to raise their vibration so that they can rise up enough to a high enough level that they can either reincarnate again or go back and heal their souls in a higher space.
Mm.
So we did a lot of work, and everyone would tell us, you guys are always working on something, like you're always growing through something. And yeah, we couldn't fully share at the time what we were growing through, but it was intense.
Mm. Yeah, it sounds like it has been. So how did you guys meet, or like what was the experience like when you did meet?
Yeah. So I was going to a meditation group weekly, and in this group we were exchanging energy, and I had become attuned to this Japanese energy called Jore. It's much like Reiki, except for it's a very compassionate, loving energy. So it's not as like, it doesn't go as deep or as harsh as Reiki does. Just very loving. It is the compassionate, loving energy of Kuan Yin. And so I was doing that, and I was sharing this with friends, and he was running through a big park one day, and he was on his journey, and he was called to this Japanese man with a sign that said free spiritual healing. Well, this Japanese man was actually my sensei. And so he went and did the free spiritual healing, and the man had kept inviting him to the meditation circles, but he would never tell him the time or the place. And during that time, I was growing through some really big transitions, and I wasn't ready for him. I really wasn't ready. And then finally, months later, he had got an address and he came to the meditation circle. And that night, we were sitting on opposite sides of the room, and I'm like, I don't know, there's just something about him. And all of the women were kind of gathered around him, because you don't see a lot of guys at meditation circles. And so everyone was like being close to him. And my soul is very reserved and quiet and in the corner. And so I was in that space, and he that night I was actually offering free Reiki sessions to anyone who wanted to come, and he took me up on it. And so the following week he came to my home to get a Reiki session, and he walked in, he didn't recognize me. He's like, "Where's your friend at?" And then I did a reading for him, and he was shocked. He started crying. He's like, "There's no way you can know this stuff." And, he laid down, and I gave him the session. And in the middle of this session, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so in love with this man. Like, my heart is just bursting right now." And I'm like, there's no way he can't be feeling it too. Like, he has to be feeling this. And we got done, and I brought him like a little cup of water so he could just, come back into his body. And he puts the cup to the side, and he takes my hand, and he's like, "I've been looking for you my whole life." And it was just like, "Oh, okay. Hi." And so from that moment on, we knew that we didn't know what it was. And he actually was kind of still in a relationship at that time. And I'm like, I'm fighting spirit, because I'm like, how can you bring me somebody who's already with somebody? This is stupid. And what were you thinking? Like, I'm angry with spirit right now. And, they just said, like, timing wise, it had to be this way. Just hold on, it's going to work out. And so he has a very big heart. He didn't want to leave her during the holidays. And I thought that was valid. So by New Year's, he finally had left and moved in with me. And then, yeah, at the end of January, we were married in spirit.
Mhm.
And ever since, it's just, we've been inseparable, and been
Wow.
growing and learning, and going through all the cycles together.
And I think if you can speak to that a little bit, because obviously, um, divine connections is something that a lot of people are on that journey, and a lot in some are together, some are in separation. And I always try and tell my clients that are in physical separation that it is still a growing experience whilst being in a dynamic. So can you just touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think, my guides want me to share this. I'm going to share this first. Before we got married, we were continuing to go to these meditation circles together. And there was a night where we were outside afterwards, and we hugged. And when we hugged, I felt like he had disappeared, and I was just hugging myself. And it felt so good. It was just the most amazing thing. And then we both stepped back, and he said, did you feel that?" And I said, "What did you feel?" He goes, "It felt like you disappeared, and I was just hugging myself." And I was like, wow, that's exactly what I felt. And we had this embrace where we just became one, like our souls connected and united as one in that moment. And so that was the knowing. And then fast forward to the growing. um, we both had, our bodies had stuff that we needed to grow through, and we had both been through different things in our lifetimes that still needed clearing, which was part of the contract for us. And so for me, it was a lot of coming from a lineage with alcoholism and drug addiction and just lower vibrational stuff. I had a lot of anger that was just coming out of me. Out of nowhere. I would do the dishes, and I would just like slam the dishes down and be so angry. And he came from a home where his mother was emotionally unavailable for him. And so when I would get in these moods, it would trigger him, and then he would go into freeze. And so my response is usually like fight. I'm a fighter. His response is freeze, and I didn't understand that. I He would freeze up, he would go silent, he wouldn't talk to me, he would pull back. And so we went through this like push and pull of trying to learn each other and trying to learn how to grow through the things that we were growing through, and triggering each other. We were constantly in this space where, I would say something so simple, and it would just set him off to a memory or something that happened in his past. And he would tap out and freeze up on me. And I'm like, oh, okay, that I started to recognize it after a while. And thankfully, because I'm so tapped in, I can usually go to him and say, okay, like let's talk about this. And the one thing that we really did that saved our relationship through this was, and I say saved because there's some darkness that comes up, and you really have to you have to grow together. And so the thing that saved us, I feel, was we got to this space where we would say, I just need you to hold space for me right now. What I'm going to say is really hard for me to say. And, a lot of times a lot of problems that people have in relationships is miscommunication. And so I would say, you know, this is how you made me feel today when you did da 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 da. And then he would listen and go, oh, I didn't mean to make you feel that way. That wasn't how I felt. Here's how I wanted it to come off. And then it was like, oh, okay, that's way different. So we were able to work out our communication. But I mean, there have been times of this just deep dark shadow that was in our bodies. So for him, um the soul that was in his body before was in a really low vibration, obviously being homicidal and suicidal. And so one of the things was his sacral was very out of balance. And so it was just this constant like fight about sex or how sex was, or it was just something about that. And to the point where like we just couldn't even be around each other, and it got so bad that I had to say, like, I literally looked him in the eyes and was like, I will grow through the shadow with you. I will go into your shadow with you, but you have to rise into the light with me, because there's only so much shadow work I can do with you. I need to pull away and love myself no matter what. And that was part of my vow to him when we married spiritually, was I will always put myself first. And I'm going to love myself no matter what. So if we ever get into a space where I feel like it's you or me, I'm going to pull back. And I've held my word on that, and it's been really hard. But in those spaces where I've had to pull back, I've told him, you know, I love you. I'm sending all of your guides and angels and whoever needs to be with you at this time, but you need to pull yourself out of that space, and then we can come back into union. And so we've had those cycles.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that and in such depth, because I think it's important for people to perhaps not glamorize so much. I think a lot of people have the perception of you come into union and then everything is just magical. Um,
Yeah.
and maybe for some, it's a less bumpier ride, but I do feel like there's still a lot of growth. And I think that these type of connections are designed to push through some of the hardest, darkest, you know, parts of our soul. So thank you.
Mhm.
So I guess let's talk about the more uniqueness of your journey and where you're at now, if you're comfortable to continue on there.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Okay, so in the end of 2022, I was going to these Kundalini awakening workshops, and they were Kundalini awakening and light integration, I think is what it's called. Um, and I instantly got opened up to light language, and all of this new stuff started coming in, and my spirit baby started coming and speaking with me. And I was like, oh, okay, this is new. Neither one of us wanted children before. So it was like, okay, we opened up to it. And, um, we had this beautiful vision of what we would eventually have as children.
Mhm.
And we never tried, we never were like, oh, we're going to have them now.
Mhm.
But we never not tried either. We were always just open and said the spirits will come when our babies want to come through, they'll come through. And so fast forward to February of 2023, and my guides came to me and told me that I was pregnant. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so I took a pregnancy test and it came back negative. And I was like, wait, what? And I connected with my guides and I'm like, what's going on? Like I know I am having a missed period, multiple missed periods. My body is like, there's something going on. I feel something shifting, what's changing. And they said, one, you need to trust in your intuition. And two, these babies want to be born outside of the Western medical system. And part of that is also pregnancy tests and, everything that it's become. And so they just kept telling me to go back to the beginning of times. In the beginning of times, a woman knew she was pregnant because of the changes in her body. She didn't pee on a stick and magically know that she was pregnant, right? So they just kept telling me to trust, trust, trust. And by April of 2023, I had done hot yoga for about 8 years. And by April of 2023, I wasn't able to do my hot yoga anymore. Like my body was rejecting it. It just said absolutely not. I had got to the point where I just wanted to lay on my mat. And then it was like, no, I can't even be in the heat. Like I got to get out of my mat. And so that happened in April 2024. And then at the end of May, I'm sorry, April 2023. At the end of May 2023, a good friend of mine had bought me a bouquet of flowers and very randomly told me Happy Mother's Day. And I was like, oh, okay. And she said, I bought these flowers and Spirit told me that these are for you because, this is your very first Mother's Day. And I was like, oh. Okay, so Spirit started giving me more messages. By July of 2023, I had a session with an incredible womb shaman, and that was a very magical experience. And afterwards, I started getting messages that we were having twins. And so everything was popping up, twin this, twin that. And I was in denial. I was like, oh, no, so we can have one baby and then maybe another one later, but not twins. And I tried so hard to fight it. And the more I fought it, the more like Spirit kept bringing it to me. And it was like, you're having twins, open up and accept it. And so I finally did. And then come November 2023, I had decided that I didn't want to tell any of my family that I was pregnant because we're doing everything outside of Western medicine. I didn't want any any ill feelings towards us. And so I decided that, and in that decision, when I had finally fully made that decision and my husband and I talked it out loud, I started to bleed. And I was really concerned. I'm like, something's going on. Like, this doesn't feel right. What is it? And when we connected, the message was that the babies were the souls that were in these bodies before, that they were coming back in and that they were coming in to work on the lineage. And so if I disconnected from that lineage and didn't have anything to do with them, it was going to be a harder path for the babies. Ergo, the babies were going to abort the mission. And so, you always hear about, mothers aborting their babies. You never really hear about babies aborting their mothers. And it was a terrifying feeling for me, feeling like my babies would abort me. And I just sat with it and I said, is there any way for them to like save them and for them to get into a better space? And they said yes. And the timelines are going to shift. And so I was like, okay, I didn't really think much of it. I was still growing, having all the symptoms. My body was changing. I was going through all these 3D symptoms that happen with pregnancy still. And so, we got fast forward. I thought I was that they were going to come in January of 2024. And that didn't happen. And then by March of 2024, and them still not arriving, I began to just spin out. And I got in my head and I started, I had to stop doing client sessions for a little while because I didn't trust myself. I just was like, what's going on? Am I going crazy? Am I losing my mind? I know what my body feels like. I know I'm feeling them move and kick, and I'm having all of these different sensations throughout my body, and they're not here, and I don't understand it. And there was a brief moment where I thought, do I go to a Western medicine like hospital and figure out what's wrong with me? And Spirit said, absolutely not. Like, that is not their journey. That is not what they're coming for. You have to stay away from there. And so I shifted and I just said, what do I do? And they just said, keep surrendering, surrender and trust. And trust what you're feeling, not what you're thinking, because my mind was all over the place. And there were so many, by this time, there were so many people that knew that the babies were coming. So it was constant every day. I was getting messages from so many different people asking, what's going on? Are the babies here yet? Are you okay? We're worried about you. Go to a hospital, do this, do that. It was so much. I was cutting cords all day long, every day. It was exhausting. And in the middle of all this, our landlord decides he wants to Airbnb our property. And so we are now homeless and growing through this just major life cycle shift. And it was just, I asked Spirit, like, what is this? I don't know that I can continue this journey. And they just said, things are not in alignment yet. There are things that need to be in alignment for these babies to come to Earth Realm. And until those things are aligned, they're going to continue to be in your belly there. And I said, are they actually in my belly, or am I losing my mind? And they're like, no, they're there. But this is when they started to tell me that I was shape shifting. And so, there were days that I would look at my belly and it would be huge, and I would feel like I could hardly walk and I'm waddling. And then there were days where my belly was small and I could see my feet. And it was like, what is going on with me? And I remember just telling my husband, like, am I losing my mind? Do you see this too? Do you see what's going on with me? And he, I think, was just like in disbelief as well. Like, he didn't know what to think. He just would look at, like, he wouldn't answer me. He would just look at me and be like, and then, when we were homeless, we got to this space where he finally was like, I don't think you're pregnant. And I was like, what? And I led him into a quantum healing hypnosis technique session. And the first question I asked him was, am I pregnant? He said, absolutely. It was like, there's no doubt about it. You are pregnant. You are bringing these babies are coming into Earth Realm. They are here to help Mother Earth. They have their missions, and they're very strong, and they know what they're doing, but they are requiring you both to raise your vibration, because these are seventh dimensional babies, and they're not here to do any of the 3D stuff that you're used to. So you're going to cycle in and out of things. And so then I had to start opening my mind. And that really, when I say open my mind, like, there's a lot that I've opened my mind up to, but having to open my mind that my body was actually shape shifting and that these babies were coming and going from my body was wild. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And yeah, it's an expansion in consciousness that really stretches you beyond what we've ever known from a 3D linear perspective. And I'm so glad that you shared that point. Have you noticed, because that was probably one of the most remarkable things that I've experienced on this journey, and I know so many other women going through this and have been for years, it really takes you out of linear, and it puts you in, it's timelines, it's vibration, it's so very, very different. um, um, but can you feel that the subtle shifts in terms of like when they morph in and out?
Yeah.
Yeah. And have you noticed why that happens or when that happens? Have you been watching and observing?
Oh
And
yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
before you answer, I'm just going to pause for a second.
Okay.
And we're back. So I was just asking, yeah, if you could share or shed a little bit of light on the interdimensional aspect, I guess is probably how I determine it, but how the shape shifting coming in and out and how and why and what you've witnessed and observed around that.
Yeah, the babies are requiring us to be at a high vibration. And so when I'm in a high vibration, I feel them. They're moving, my body's changing, I'm big, my belly's big. And when I'm in a low vibration, they're gone. It's like they're not with me.
Mm.
And I I remember, so in April we went this year, 2024, we went to Sedona and connected with a good friend out there. And, I told her I was pregnant, and she was just like, I don't know. She said, "Oh, you must have just got pregnant." And I was like, I just left it at that. We actually left, we went to Pulaski, which was actually the last time that all of our souls, my husband and myself, and the souls that are coming in were in the same place. We've actually been here before in ancient times. We lived in Pulaski in Sedona. And we had a really magical experience there, helped shift some earthbound spirits of family members that were still there. And we came back from Pulaski to visit our friend again, and she said, "Oh my gosh, you're gonna have the babies tonight." And so she said, "I didn't like earlier you look like you had no pregnant belly, and now your belly looks huge." And so she did actually a Reiki session on me. She put her hands on my belly and she said, "Oh, the babies are in a portal." She said they're waiting for you to hold the vibration. And when you can hold that, and not just hold the vibration, but ground the vibration.
Mm.
She said the hardest part is you can hold it. You do a great job holding it, but you're not grounded.
Mm.
And so you have to ground the vibration, and that's when the babies are going to come through. And so that's what I've been working on ever since, is grounding the vibration. And I've noticed that the more grounded I am and the more high vibrational I am, the more I feel them, the bigger my belly looks. And in the other times when I'm not, I know when I'm in a low vibration. Before it was like, oh, I'm just feeling something. And now I'm like, oh, there's no belly today. I'm in a low vibration. I need to shift out of this. Yeah.
Wow. So thank you. Incredible. So they're coming in at seventh dimensional frequency. I'm gathering based off. Yeah. Yeah. Have they given you any indication of like, I mean, what else can you share about this experience based on what they have come through and shared with you?
Yeah. Um, Mother Mary has been a big part of this journey for me, and I never connected with her before, but during this journey, she's really come in and helped me be able to stand in my authenticity. I feel like a lot of people don't, we talk about her journey like it was this glamorous thing, but there was a lot that she had to grow through, and I feel like I'm feeling that growth now, right? Because I I go out in public and I hide my belly because I don't want somebody to ask me from one day to the next what's going on with me, and so that's been part of this journey, and learning what it means to hold the seventh dimensional vibration. My husband and I, we feel we've been living in this fifth dimensional vibration for a few years, pretty much since we came into union. People would tell us about 3D experiences still, and they just weren't in resonance with us. And so we're like, okay, we're upgrading again. What does holding the seventh dimension mean? And it really is this space of authenticity and being able to share and speak our truth no matter what anyone thinks or says or does, and not allowing anyone to pull us down in vibration. And so that was a big part of this journey and this growth with them. And the things that, Spirit had said, there are things that need to align for them to come in. And so the things that need to align, one of the biggest things for us was um, I had to soften into my feminine energy, and he had to stand stronger in his masculine energy. And we had to balance that out. We balanced each other out great, but solo, we were very off balance. And so we had to come into that balance of self. And when we did, it was like everything like pushed forward. It's like we were back on the timeline. And then when we would drop out of it, we would drop to a different timeline and things would shift again. And, so there was just this back and forth of like jumping into the timeline of them coming and then coming back out of it. We came back from Sedona in 2024 and in such a high vibration, feeling so good. The babies were just every day moving, and I knew they were coming. We actually were on the road when my water broke, and it was incredible. I mean, it was nothing like I can even explain. So I said, oh my gosh, like the babies are coming. We need to make sure we're ready for them. And we were staying with a friend at the time. And so we said, my water possibly broke. Like this is what's going on with me and my body. And, we just want to give you a heads up. And the friend just wasn't ready. She was like, oh, nope, the babies can't come here. Like it's not time. And so we shifted back to another timeline. And in that timeline, we went deeper into what we needed to heal in our bodies. And for me, it was feeling safe in my body, no matter where I was. And knowing that I was safe in my body, then allowed my children to be safe in my body and allowed them to come in and stay longer instead of these little short periods of time that they were coming and going. And so that was a big shift for us as well, was the safety. And after we got into that safety, then we actually were able to get into a temporary home. And we're working on our forever home still. My husband is doing a lot of work for us in that realm. But the temporary home has really been able to ground us and give the babies a place to be. And this just came to me. I did I opened up my sessions again, and I was doing a shamanic session on someone, and the babies, I saw their energy come out of my belly and wrap around this being and just start doing light work on her. And I was amazed. I was just like, whoa, okay, like they're definitely in there. And so yeah, it put me in this really high vibration, and I've been able to hold it more now than ever. But there are still things that have to come into alignment. And every day it's like we learn something new, like, oh, they couldn't have come without that, or we needed to do that first. And so just this past weekend, I co-hosted an ancestral healing ceremony workshop, and it was really powerful. And one of the things that came through was our oldest daughter came through and said that, she's coming through to heal the lineage. So I needed to allow her to do that and to kind of back out and stop healing the lineage myself. So so yeah, they're connecting with me more. I'm able, when I'm in a high vibration, they're talking to me. They're, telling me originally, so it was the twins that were coming first. And then when we were supposed to have a third child coming shortly after the twins, like a Irish twin kind of situation. And because the timeline shifted with the twins, now all three babies are together. We're calling them triplets, but we still feel like they're going to come at separate times. And not allowing Western medicine to be involved will give us the opportunity to let them grow as they need to and come when they need to. So we're prepared to birth the twins, and then maybe a week or two, or maybe even a month or two later, birth the third child. And the oldest twin is the one that is coming to heal the lineage. Is the souls that were in these bodies before us. And the younger two are coming from Cassiopeia, and they're coming to help humanity. Like that is their mission, is to really come and get people to open up their minds and
Mhm.
expand the consciousness of humanity.
Mm. Oh, that's stunning. I can really feel and lean into that as you talk about them, and the frequency that is kind of being channeled through as you speak, and just feeling and sensing how powerful that is. And I love the fact that you shared about this sort of anomaly where there may be twins, triplets, multiples in whatever form, but I really believe that these type of pregnancy journeys that women are now embarking on and have been for a little while is the adjustment period as we shift and evolve as a human race, and for women to go through such unique experiences, to be so out of the box so that we can change paradigms in going back to a more natural way. And I think from my understanding, I mean, I've been knee deep in this research trying to understand this path for many, many years. Um, but in when we transcend above the third dimensional realm and we get into those higher realms, this is how pregnancy and birth and conception occurs in, you know, it's an energetic merge that occurs. It's out of linear time, and it's very, very different. So,
Yeah, and if I can just share a little bit about the time.
mm,
So I had said my husband and I had been living in the fifth dimensional space for a long while. And in that space, one thing that we enjoyed doing was playing with time. And so we would, we would be going somewhere and we didn't get a chance to eat before we left. And so, my husband taught me to slow down and nourish my body. And so we would, and then instead of rushing to get there, we would just slow down time. And we had this dynamic where every time we could either slow down or speed things up. And we were living in that for years. And so it was fun to play with time. And then now with the seventh dimension, what we're learning is that timelines are shifting so much that nothing is linear, right? Like it's going up and down and back and forward and all these different spaces. And so there's just these constant like jumps and shifts that's happening right now. And I've had clients and friends that I've connected with that have said, I knew that I was supposed to move and I had everything packed and ready to go and I had the place that I was moving to, and then the timeline shifted.
mhm,
And
mhm.
all of a sudden it was like, nope, you're not supposed to move there anymore. Like something happened and it's not your space. So disconnect from it and just be open to whatever else is coming. And so it's having, being able to connect with other people who are on this journey, maybe in different ways, has been really helpful as well.
Yeah, yeah. Mm, most definitely. Yeah, the time influxes are a crazy thing. I feel like, in particular, this year has been very strange in terms of like, it felt like, at least for me, the first 5 months felt like it happened in the blink of an eye. And then time just morphed and slowed down. Now things are accelerating again. So we really are moving out of time, but that's a hard thing to get our head around, when we're not used to it initially. Um, but yeah, I going off, I mean, is there anything else that you'd like to share about your pregnancy or about the what I call New Earth children? Um, I mean, this is a topic I could talk about for hours.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's so exciting because I've supported many, many women on this journey for many years. And I've always known that it's a matter of getting things in order, and um, that things have to fall into place before. And so it's not so much about the linear time, but like, is this in order? Is that, and having a home, having foundation of solid partnership, some of the core fundamentals, right?
Yeah.
And I think pursuing or actively pursuing soul work is another core. At least that was for me. I wouldn't have Cosmic Gateway if this hadn't abruptly changed my whole life and thrown everything on its head. So I'm incredibly grateful for that because I knew that I couldn't go back into any system at all. But yeah, before we kind of skip into anything else, is there anything else that you feel is relevant to share? Perhaps some people who might be new to this topic, I imagine that some people watching would be somewhat familiar.
Yeah. The thing for me was I was in a corporate position for almost 10 years. I was with the same company. I had a really awesome at-home position, but it just wasn't fulfilling my soul. And that was a part of the journey that the babies, required of me to be in alignment for them was absolutely not, you're not doing this corporate stuff. You have deep soul work that needs to be done. Like you're going to be helping people. And so July of this year, I resigned from that position after almost 10 years and I let it go. And I let it go, not having a home, like just having a temporary space but trusting, right? Trusting that the alignment was happening and everything was coming to fruition for us. And so the biggest thing for me in this entire journey was surrender and trust. Just over like rinse and repeat, surrender and trust, surrender and trust. And so it's these little things that maybe are not so little for some people to, leave. I started working at a very young age, so it was years and years and years of work. And the requirement from the babies was not just leave corporate, but to learn how to rest
Yeah.
because I was a workaholic. I, went above and beyond with every company that I was with. And it was like my work, I would eat, sleep, breathe it. And like everything else was kind of on the side of that. And so the babies, for weeks after I left this position, they were just like constantly, I would get so tired and they would tell me to rest. And I didn't know what rest was. I had to learn it.
Mm.
And now finally, and my husband, he's so patient and so graceful with me, and thank God. And so I say he got all the patience when we walked in, like I gave it all to him. So he could be here for me and support. And then the other last thing that came into alignment recently was they asked me not to put my life on hold for them. And I think that that is something that needs to be shared because I feel like society had taught us to put everything on hold for our children,
Mm.
to, put dreams, careers, whatever it was aside. And now my children are telling me, don't put us on hold.
Mm.
You need to continue to do what you're doing and continue helping people. And so when I put together this ancestral healing workshop, they were like elated. There was so much like good energy coming from them because they were like, this is what you're supposed to be doing. And this is what's going to bring us here because we don't want you to put your life on hold for us. And the last I felt takeaway with the babies is learning too that, and you hear people say this all the time, but this I feel like goes much deeper that I really am just the portal.
Mm.
And I'm bringing these babies through my portal, and my job is to nourish and nurture and care for them until they're able to do that for themselves. And that was a big lesson for me because I had always, because of society and my indoctrination, I had always felt like my mother could have done more for me or been there more for me. But the truth was, from a very young age, I was able to take care of myself. I was a very old soul.
Mhm.
The soul that was in this body before me and my soul, they're very old souls, and we know how to do things. And so it's like allowing our children to be on their journey and also being aware of when soul contracts are up. So there may come a day where, my soul contract with my child is no longer, and I have to be okay with letting that go so that it doesn't create any tension or lower vibrational negative energies.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that too. I feel like this is a chosen path to be the portal, to be the custodians, to allow these more galactic children to start to come through that will shape and change humanity. And it feels like an overwhelming job, I must say,
Yes.
but I do believe, and I have truly believed that these children are the bridge to bringing more conscious contact, to bridging in perhaps integration of hybrid children at some point into society. And I think that blending and merging and these unique stories will um, contribute to for people to think outside the box, to learn that there is another way that's possible. A lot of these children don't want to be detected by Western medicine because of the interventions and all those sorts of things. And we're sort of bit by bit, story by story, woman by woman, child by child, changing that movement back to a more nurturing way, perhaps.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And, being able to, they just keep telling me, go back to the beginning. Go
Mm,
back to the beginning. We didn't have all of this extra stuff that, is being used right now in hospitals. And so it's like, go back to that and trust, part of the trusting that, the babies are going to come at different times. I had heard a story recently about twins that came a full week apart, and the
mm.
first twin was born at home, and the second twin by the end of the following week, the mother and father had got into a little bit of fear.
Oh, we're just gonna.
These stories now with other people. I've seen these stories where babies are born prematurely in hospitals.
Mm,
And so my guides just keep telling me trust that
mm,
they're going to come exactly when they are meant to. And it may be that you have the twins and then a week later you have the third baby, but it's just because they need more time, and not not working through Western medicine is going to allow us the
mm.
opportunity to give the babies the time that they need to continue to grow.
Yeah, yeah. I have come across that concept too on my path, and I think the takeaway that I've applied is be open to expect anything and everything that's non-conventional. None of it has been conventional from the beginning, so why would it be that way, right the
Exactly.
and I also love the fact that you stated in the beginning, because I find I look at the common trends and anomalies throughout that there's so many women who come forward. And I want to thank you for your courage, because a lot of women I know aren't yet prepared to speak, and that's completely fine. I completely respect that. It's a hard thing to do without the evidence, the proof, and but it's a big trusting on knowing your soul's path, your body, the changes. But I feel like it needs to be spoken about to create a portal of um, introduction to allow them to come through at this point. I do feel there's this push or influx of a lot that wish to start to come through, and I think I mentioned that in the October update. Is 2025 is very much highlighted throughout 2025, 2026. Feels like
Yeah.
a lot of women who've been waiting in the wings. That feels like it's a really um, prevalent time on the timeline. Obviously, timelines do shift and change, and I've witnessed that many a time. But that feels like it is. But sorry, I was jumping around. A lot of women on this journey, including myself, either didn't want or weren't expecting to have children. It's something that's come in, and then you have to go, oh, and really process and accept, I guess. So yeah.
Yeah, and it took us a long time. It took me a long time to get here to be able to be, on camera with you and in this space, because, there was a long time that I went through this process of, like, I went through even like shaming myself and feeling guilty for telling people.
Mm,
Like, I shouldn't have told anybody. I should have just waited, right? I should have just done this all by myself. And spirit's like, no, it's for them too, because it's part of their awakening,
mm,
right? It's part of of their like opening up and opening and expanding their minds as well. So you're it had to be shared. It has to be out there. And even now more so than ever, because there are women that are struggling, and it when you feel all alone in it, it's it's the most lonely feeling I guess I can say is, what what shifted me was, finding the new earth baby stuff and realizing that other people were growing through this too. And maybe not as, I think they're all very unique. So they're not all the same, but um, understanding that I wasn't alone in the process really helped me.
Mm. I think early on, I found that was a little bit of a part of my mission was to knowing that I wasn't the only one and that I had to find the others, or at least create a space or a platform. And that's what I was told early on because I was like, all right, well, what do you want me to do? Because nothing else in my life is working right now. And I was told in no uncertain terms that I had to start writing about it, create a website, a blog, write about what I had learned and intuited and continue to do that because many women would start to go through this experience. And here we are many years on, and it continues to evolve in that way. So I look, um, at this point, there's very, very few women that I know who've actually gone through the physical birth. There are a couple, but not a lot. And I do feel that that has a lot to do with the earth itself and the vibration that is held because I've always been under the impression that we not only need to hold and anchor that frequency, but we have to be able to create an environment where they can not just survive, but to thrive.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
that's part of the home for us is the home needs to be a space that can hold their light.
mm, mhm,
My husband and I being a divine union, going out, our light is very bright and it's felt wherever we're at, and either people hate it or they love it, right? They're like drawn to it or they just don't want anything to do with us. And now having the three babies come in
mm,
and having them be such a high vibrational light, our home has to be able to hold that light. So that's been a big, big part of this alignment for us.
yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much. It's been an absolute privilege to sit here and have this conversation with you. Is there anything else other than what we've already discussed that you feel is um, wanting to come through or share that we some people may start to go through aside from pregnancy stuff as we continue to shift and evolve as human beings because I think
Yeah.
we're in that time space as I said that new experiences are coming in and I want to put voice to that and to start to normalize some of these out there. um,
Yeah, I feel that getting on the being able to comprehend non-linear time is a really important piece of it because it's, you see it with something like a pregnancy because we expect pregnancy to be so many months or days or whatever. But it's happening really for everybody right now.
mm,
Everybody's feeling this like, oh, that went by so fast, or this is dragging so slow. And everybody's feeling it. They just don't know what it is.
mm,
And so opening up to that, um, opening up to, there's a lot of supporters I'm hearing that want to be heard. So a lot of transition loved ones that are in higher like angelic dimensions, galactic spaces, elementals, all of these, they're here to assist. And so they're really trying to connect with us right now. And they're just really telling everyone to stay open and to expand your mind,
mm,
expand and expand your heart. That's been a big part of this receiving the babies too, is expanding the heart space to be able to take them in.
mm,
Expand your mind, expand your heart, be open,
mm.
and surrender and trust.
Beautiful. beautifully said and beautiful place to wrap up this conversation. I want to thank you so much. Are you open to putting, like, if people want to contact you, can I put some contact details? Yeah, so I'll put that in.
Absolutely.
Oh, bless you. Um, I will put that in the description box if people feel that they resonate and they would like to connect with you. And of course, if you're going through this, I would, if you want to connect with myself as well, all the details will be in the description box along with the New Earth Children platform where I hope to do more. I used to hold support circles for women. I had put that on hold, but I'll look at picking that back up again as we sort of move into the new year. Um, and yeah, thank you for being the first sort of in person to hear the call. If you do have a unique story, you're going through something really unique that's out of the box, I would love to talk to you and get you on and let's start to normalize what is happening as we go through this evolution. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you everyone for watching. Until next time, much love. Bye bye.